The fire spread faster than anyone could react. Glass shattered, metal screamed, and inside the wrecked car, a woman was chained to her seat. Onlookers shouted from a distance, too terrified to get close. But then, through the smoke, a man in a black suit charged straight into the flames. That man was Ethan Cole, a single father and the CEO of one of the biggest tech firms in the city. No one understood why he risked his life that night, not until the truth surfaced. The woman trapped in that burning car wasn't just a stranger. She was the bride he was never meant to meet. Ethan Cole wasn't the kind of man who believed in miracles anymore. Once he did, back when his wife Claire would light candles at dinner and whisper that everything, even pain, had a reason. But when cancer took her 3 years ago, that light went out forever. Since then, Ethan lived for only one thing: his little girl, Lily. At 34, Ethan was the youngest CEO his company had ever had. To the world, he was brilliant, confident, untouchable, the man who rebuilt an empire from his garage. But beneath that sharp suit and calm smile was a father who still made heart-shaped pancakes every morning, because his daughter once said, "Mommy would have liked that." That Friday night was supposed to be quiet. Ethan had just left the office, exhausted, tie loosened, already thinking about bedtime stories and the way Lily fell asleep clutching his thumb. Rain drenched the streets, headlights slicing through the mist. He stopped at a red light near the old bridge, the one that arched over the river like a spine of steel. Then it happened. A crash so loud it shook the ground. Metal twisting, tires screaming. Ethan's head jerked up. Just ahead, a black car had slammed into the barrier, flames exploding from the hood. People froze. Some screamed. Others reached for their phones, but no one dared to move. Ethan didn't think. He ran. He threw open his car door and sprinted into the storm of smoke and sparks. The heat hit him like a wall, scorching and suffocating. Through the cracked windshield, he saw her, a woman, hands trembling, chained to the seat. Not a seatbelt. Real chains. Her wrists were bleeding where the metal had bitten through her skin. "Hey, can you hear me?" Ethan shouted, coughing as the smoke clawed at his throat. Her eyes fluttered open, deep brown, filled with fear and tears. She tried to speak, but only coughed harder. "Please! I can't move." Ethan yanked at the door. It wouldn't budge. He grabbed a jagged piece of metal from the ground and smashed the window. Shards flew, slicing his arm, but he didn't stop. He reached in, burning his hands on the hot frame. "Who did this to you?" he yelled. She shook her head weakly. "I don't know. They left me here." "Please help me!" Smoke thickened. Flames climbed the dashboard, licking at her torn white gown, a wedding dress. Ethan froze for half a heartbeat. A bride, chained inside a burning car? None of it made sense, but there was no time to ask. He pulled harder at the chains, but they wouldn't break. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver knife. His late wife's father's keepsake. It wasn't meant for this, but it was all he had. He jammed it into the link, twisting with everything he had until one chain snapped loose. "Almost there," he shouted as the fire roared closer. The heat seared his face. The woman screamed, one hand still trapped. Ethan gritted his teeth, cutting faster, ignoring the blistering pain. Finally, the last chain broke. He wrapped his arms around her and dragged her free just as the car exploded behind them. The blast sent shards of glass flying. Ethan shielded her with his body, his jacket thrown over her as they hit the pavement. People screamed. Someone called for help. Ethan looked down. She was unconscious, but breathing. Her hand clutched a half-melted silver locket. When he pried it open, inside was a photograph of her and a man he didn't recognize. Sirens wailed in the distance. When the paramedics arrived, Ethan refused to let go of her hand. He climbed into the ambulance beside her, his own burns ignored, and that was the night everything changed. The doctors rushed her into surgery while Ethan waited outside. Hands trembling, smoke still burning in his lungs. Hours slipped by. Rain began to fall against the hospital windows, each drop tapping like quiet knocks on the glass. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the fear in her eyes, the way she'd tried to speak before collapsing. When the doctor finally appeared, Ethan jumped to his feet. "Is she okay?" "She's stable," the doctor said, voice weary but hopeful. "Severe smoke inhalation, burns, dehydration, but she'll recover." "You saved her life, Mr. Cole. Ethan nodded slowly, still processing everything. Did you find any ID? The doctor hesitated before handing him a small, soot-stained paper sealed in plastic. Only this. It was in her dress pocket. A wedding certificate. Ethan's eyes scanned the names. Sophia Jameson and Alexander Reed. The date. Today. A chill crawled up his spine. He didn't know her, but the thought of a bride chained inside a burning car on her wedding day clawed at his chest. It made no sense. Police officers questioned him for hours, where he found her, what he saw, who she might be. But Ethan had no answers. When they finally let him go, he still couldn't bring himself to leave. Quietly, he walked down the dim corridor and stopped at her hospital room door. Sophia lay motionless, her skin pale against the white sheets, her hands wrapped in bandages. The heart monitor beeped in steady rhythm beside her. Ethan stood there for a long moment, unsure why he felt so drawn to her. Maybe because he'd once tried to save someone he loved and failed. Lily's voice echoed in his mind from earlier that day. "Daddy, sometimes angels wear suits instead of wings?" He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Guess you were right, kiddo," he whispered. He turned to leave, but a faint voice stopped him. "Don't go," Ethan froze. He turned back. Sophia's eyes were open now, glassy but focused. "You saved me," she whispered. "Why?" He asked softly, his throat dry. "Because no one else did," she breathed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "They were supposed to kill me. What?" Her voice came in broken gasps. "It wasn't an accident. I was running from my wedding. They found out and chained me in that car." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Who did?" Before she could answer, a nurse hurried in. "Sir, she needs rest. Please, you can speak later." Ethan nodded, stepping back, but his mind was racing. He didn't know her story yet, but he knew one thing. Whoever had done this wasn't finished. Outside, the city lights shimmered like distant stars. Ethan stood at the window, staring at his faint reflection. He thought of Lily asleep at home, safe, and of Sophia lying alone in that sterile room, haunted by something dark, for the first time in years. He didn't just feel tired, he felt needed. He couldn't have known that by morning everything would change. The woman he'd saved would turn his world upside down, challenge everything he believed, and force him to face the pain he'd buried long ago. Because sometimes fate doesn't whisper, it crashes into your life. Wrapped in fire, fear, and chains you can't ignore. The next morning, Sophia woke in a panic, flashes of flames, metal, and a man's cruel laughter haunting her mind. Ethan was there, calm but steady, handing her a glass of water. "You're safe now," he said gently, but she shook her head. "No one's ever safe from him." Then, trembling, Sophia told him the truth. She had been set to marry billionaire Alexander Reed, a man powerful enough to erase anyone who crossed him. When she discovered his secret trafficking network, she tried to escape. His men caught her, chained her in that car to make sure she never spoke again. Ethan's pulse thundered. He'd faced ruthless competitors before, but this was something far darker. He couldn't walk away. "You're not alone anymore," he told her. Together, they went to the police with the evidence Sophia had hidden inside her locket. Within days, the empire of lies began to crumble. Arrests, headlines, justice finally closing in. But for Ethan, the real victory wasn't in the news. It came outside the courthouse when Sophia took his hand and whispered, "You didn't just save my life. You gave it back." Ethan smiled softly. "Maybe you did the same for me,"